So, this is chapter 26, and they're going to be talking about royalty. When Midge turned 7 years old, there was no cake, no celebration, no singing, no present, no acknowledgement on her birthday at all, other than Midge saying, "Uncle, today I am 7 years old." And Uncle sang in return, "Did I ask how old you were today? Get out of my face before I give you a good clout to the ear." A few hours after receiving her birthday clout to the ear, Midge went out into the field with her uncle's sheep when she saw something glittering and glowing on the horizon. She thought for a moment that it was the sun, but she turned and saw that the sun was in the west, where it should be, sinking to join the earth. This thing that shone so brightly was something else. Midge stood in the field and shaded her eyes with her left hand and watched the brilliant light draw closer and closer and closer until it revealed itself to be King Philip and his queen Rosemary and their daughter, the young Princess P. The royal family was surrounded by knights in shining armor and horses in shining armor, and atop each member of the royal family's head there was a golden crown. And they were all, the king and the queen and the princess, dressed in robes decorated with jewels and sequins that glittered and glowed and captured the light of the setting sun and reflected it back to Midge. "Gore," breathed Midge. The Princess P was riding on a white horse that picked its legs very high and set them down very daintily. The P saw Midge standing and staring, and she raised a hand to her. "Hello," said the Princess P merrily. "Hello," and she waved her hand again. Midge did not wave back. Instead, she stood and watched, her mouth open as the perfect, beautiful family passed her by. "Papa," called the princess to the king, "what's wrong with that girl? She will not wave to me." "Never mind," said the king. "It's of no consequence, my dear. But I'm a princess, and I waved to her. She should wave back." Midge, for her part, continued to stare. Looking at the royal family had awakened some deep and slumbering need in her. It was as if a small candle had been lit in her interior, sparked to life by the brilliance of the king and the queen and the princess. For the first time in her life, reader, Midge hoped. And hope is like love, a ridiculous, wonderful, powerful thing. Midge tried to name this strange emotion. She put her hand up to touch one of her aching ears, and she realized that the feeling she was experiencing, the hope, the blooming inside her, felt exactly the opposite of a good clout. She smiled and took her hand away from her ear. She waved to the princess. "Today is my birthday," Midge called out. But the king and the queen and the princess were by now too far away to hear her. "Today," shouted Midge, "I am 7 years old." Chapter 27. A Wish. That night, in the small dark hut that she shared with Uncle and the sheep, Midge tried to speak of what she had seen. "Uncle," she said, I saw some human stars today." "How's that?" "I saw them all glittering and glowing, and there was a little princess wearing her own crown and riding on a white, tippy-toed horse." "What are you going on about?" said her uncle. "I saw a king and queen and an itty-bitty princess," said Mig. "So?" "I would like," said Mig shyly, "I wish to be one of them princesses." "Ha!" said Uncle. "Ha, dumb, ugly thing like you. You ain't even worth the enormous lot I paid for you. Don't I wish every night that I had back the good hen and that red tablecloth in place of you?" He didn't wait long for Midge to guess the answer to his question. "I do," he said. "I wish it every night. That tablecloth was the color of blood. That hen could lay eggs like nobody's business." "I want to be a princess," said Midge. "I want to wear a crown." "A crown?" Uncle laughed. "She wants to wear a crown." He laughed harder. He took an empty kettle and put it atop his head. "Look at me. I'm a king. You see my crown? I'm a king just like I always wanted to be. I'm a king because I want to be one." He danced around the hut with the kettle on his head. He laughed until he cried, and then he stopped dancing. And he took the kettle from his head and looked at Midge and said, "Do you want a good clout to the ear for such nonsense?" "No, thank you, Uncle," said Midge. But she got one anyway. "Look here," said Uncle, after the clout had been delivered. "We will hear no more talk of princesses. Besides, whoever asked you what you wanted to be in this world, girl?" The answer to that question, reader, as you well know, was absolutely no one ever asked. that's the end of this reading. And unfortunately, we feel pretty bad for this girl. But I did notice a little something. She talked about a candle. She talked about like she had felt this candle being lit inside her. And that kind of reminds me of a match that was lit very close to somebody else, that lit something inside of them, this want and this need for light or the sun, kind of similar to a couple of other people in this book. So when you hear that light, just keep thinking. When you hear about candles and this want and this hope, just keep thinking, what does that light symbolize? Princess P is that light. Despero loves that light. Roscuro and this new girl, Midge, all see this light, this something, this hope. So keep that in mind as we continue reading.